Hi, it's Jimmy. I'm just on a lunch break and thought I'd film a quick video about two books that I've read recently. I bought them both after recommendations on Twitter asking for books for Women in Translation Month. I actually didn't manage to finish either of them during that month, which I think was September, August, but I've read them now, and so I thought I'd mention them. The first one I read was called Tentacle by Rita, and the second one I read was Always Coca-Cola by Alexandra Chrieteh, translated by Michelle Hartman. And I didn't love either of these books, to be honest. I think Tentacle was a bit better. I think I enjoyed Tentacle more. But in other ways, I felt like there was a really good book under the surface of Always Coca-Cola that I didn't quite have access to. So Tentacle is sort of sci-fi. I think one of the blurbs on the back calls it quite punk, and I think that's accurate. It's got time, it's set in different times, and there's sort of time traveling like aspect. It's a little, parts of it are a bit post-apocalyptic, and it's kind of an environmental disaster, so that's topical. And I was a little bit confused at first. Although it's not a very big book, each chapter was alternating with different sets of characters, and I wasn't sure how they were going to link up. Eventually it does make sense, and there's lots of mind-blowing moments when you realise different connections that you didn't expect. I feel like if I'd read it again, then I'd probably get a lot out of that second reading, because I'd spot loads of things that link up that I wasn't sort of keeping an eye out for, because I didn't realise their connections the first time round. So I thought it was pretty good, fun read with some interesting ideas, a really strong setting, and I'd recommend it. I'd recommend it as a bit of a short romp for something a bit different, a bit wacky, different things going on. If you like the sound of it from the description, you'll probably enjoy it, and if you don't like the sound of it, then I wouldn't urge you to rush out and give it a chance necessarily. Always Coca-Cola, I think, was worse. And so Tentacle is translated from Spanish, Always Coca-Cola is translated from Arabic. And there's a lot of points in Always Coca-Cola where you can tell that there's wordplay taking place in the original Arabic that either hasn't been translated or has been translated in a slightly, it sort of explains things by using Arabic words and then telling you what they mean, or saying, oh, this person mispronounces this sound, so this word, which does mean this, instead says the word that means that. So you get the impression that there's a lot going on in the original that hasn't come across through the translation. And there is a translator's note at the end, which is a few pages long, where they go into that, and that's quite interesting. I saw one review on Goodreads that said you should read that translator's note first to kind of contextualise some of the rest of it. Other aspects of it that make it a little bit difficult to appreciate fully are that it depends a lot on kind of satirising certain stereotypes of certain groups of people who live in and study in Beirut, and different stereotypes about different parts of Beirut. And some of that I liked, because I have spent a couple of weeks in Beirut, and so it was quite nostalgic for me, sort of seeing familiar place names and things like that, and I did kind of get some of the references a little bit. But I think, and I do like reading books that clearly aren't written for me. I think the original of this was clearly written for people in Beirut, really, to get the most enjoyment out of. And I don't mind reading a book that's not written for me. But with that and the translation and all of those things, it ended up being, it felt a little bit boiled down to the plot and the characters, which were, most of the characters were relatively shallow. It's quite a short book, so there's not loads of plot, and so there's hints of these sort of satirical elements about the society and also the stereotypes in the place that are interesting and enjoyable. But at the end of the day, it's it feels like a shadow of a good book rather than a good book itself. I'm disappointed to say. Looking at reviews, it hasn't got great reviews, this, at least the English translation, and a lot of people are sort of pointing out similar things to what I've said. One or two people have said it's bad in Arabic as well, but obviously I haven't read the Arabic, and I do get, I feel like it will be better in Arabic, but at least one or two people online still don't feel like it's very good. I think frustratingly, the book that it kind of put me in mind of the most was Convenience Store Woman, which is one of my favourite novels and one of the best books I've read in the last few years, in my opinion. I really enjoyed it, although I do agree that different people get different things out of it. It's not for everyone. And Always Coca-Cola is kind of in the mind, a slightly esoteric mind of the main character in a similar way that Convenience Store Woman is. And it's about how she sort of goes through the world and has different expectations and ideas of interactions and things that are going on, and people are judging other people, and how she feels about that and adapts to that. But although it had those elements, it was just nowhere near as satisfying and good and entertaining and gripping as Convenience Store Woman, unfortunately. So I bought more books for Women in Translation Month that I still haven't got to yet, so I guess I'm spreading it out and just doing Women in Translation several months, and I'll just keep reading Women in Translation all the time. So hopefully I'll get to talk about some of those in some future videos. But yeah, have you read Always Coca-Cola or Tentacle by Rita Indiana? What did you think? What was your favourite book you read in Women in Translation Month? Have you got any good recommendations for me? Have you read Always Coca-Cola in the original Arabic? Is it better that way? What do you reckon? Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you later.